Hi everyone, Stjepan here. In today's video I'm going to continue covering the Paraćin Chess Open, which I'd played at the beginning of July. In round 1 I drew a higher rated opponent, as you could have seen in yesterday's video. In round 2 I got paired against a very strong opponent once again, 22-73, and preparing for the game I had, which is rare in my case, several things I wanted to play, and I just couldn't decide what I should go for. So he usually plays the Najdorf, so there were two options which I wanted to play against his Najdorf. There was the anti-Najdorf Prins variation, which I did end up playing, and I was also preparing knight c3, some variations in the closed Sicilian. And since my repertoire against the Najdorf or the d6 Sicilian is so broad, sometimes it's hard to decide what to do. Ended up going for the Prins Sicilian. So we have e4, c5, knight f3. Let me just turn this down. Knight f3, d6, d4, takes, knight f6, and now pawn to f3. And there are several different things black could play here. He did play e5, which is, I think, the best move and the move that allows black to equalize. Knight to b3. And now, well, usually people either play d5 or bishop e6. It's possible to play knight c6, which allows c4. It's possible to play bishop e7, which also allows c4. But basically, I was prepared for these two moves, and I was expecting one of these two moves. And he surprised me with a5. Now, when he played a5, I was really upset, because a5 is one of four positions, one of four holes in my opening repertoire, which I've been telling myself I had to, well, repair for a while now, and I never got around to doing that, which is a huge mistake. I mean, I should not be playing the f3 Sicilian until I've had a detailed look at this. So I wasn't really sure what to do. Here's what I knew. I knew that a4 isn't really a good move because he gets in d5 very quickly, and then I have to play bishop b5, he plays knight c6, and basically black has a fine position, having prevented c4, expanded with d5. I've given up the b4 square already, and this should be a good position for black. I think the engine says equal, but I'd prefer to be black actually in this position. This doesn't really make too much sense. My knight is no good on b3. The move I would really like to play, c4, simply fails to a very common tactic in many Sicilian positions, in this one as well. Knight takes e4, and now after fe4, queen h4 check, king d2, and this is simply bad for white. Black has given up a piece, but has very nice development, a lot of activity, a hole on d4 to exploit, which is going to be undefended pretty quickly, and this is no good. Another move I knew was an option here is the best move, and I did not play that, and that's bishop to b5 check. The reason I was afraid of this is because it transposes to some of the main lines of the Sicilian after knight c6, knight c3, bishop to e7, bishop to e3, castles, queen to d2, and knight a7. This is a position which I don't know how to play. It's fine for white, I just don't know how to play it. I'm not used to playing these setups with long castling and my knight on c3, especially since the a-pawn has already advanced to a5, which means that if black manages to get in b5, a4 comes quickly, and then on b4 I don't have knight a4, and so on. That being said, this is the best move. I should have gone for this. I did not remember everything, I just knew that I don't like these positions. So I found myself in a situation in which I basically did not know what to do on move 6, which is rare in my case. I usually know my openings, at least for the first 5 or 10 moves, quite well. So I played a move which made sense to me. The problem I have here, the strategic problem I have, is that if a4 comes, I don't really want to play knight to d2 with my bishop blocked in on c1. So in my mind, I should develop my bishop from c1 to be able to meet a4 with knight to d2. So I decided to improvise, and I played bishop to g5. I didn't know how good this was. I figured it has to be okay, because if a4 comes, I have knight d2 and then c4, knight c3 later on. My opponent played bishop to e6, which I was happy to see, and I played pawn to c4. And now, even though I should say I'd analyzed this position, this game 2 times since I've played it, c4 is a bad move. The engine now thinks black is better. I thought having a position which I understand is better than having a completely equal or slightly better position, because I'll spend less time and be able to play more efficiently. What I should do is again transpose to the position that you saw previously with knight c3, and after bishop to e7 go bishop to b5 check. Should mention that a4 doesn't work, because again I have bishop to b5 check, taking this pawn or forcing bishop to d7. So that's what I should have done. Knight c3, bishop e7, bishop e5, knight c6, normal position. I'm going to play queen d2, castle queenside, and it's going to be fun. Instead, I played c4, he played a4, which I'd expected. I played knight to d2, and at least now my knight is not blocking in my bishop. Queen a5 played, knight c3 played, knight c6, and now I simply blundered. The next move is the beginning of my downfall in this game. The next move shows a complete lack of understanding of the position. And after the game, when I came back home, when I started analyzing my games from Paraćin and from other tournaments, I found a really good plan, which I've never seen before. And I'm happy I found it on my own. If you want to pause the video here and find a strategic plan which actually makes white's position much easier to play than black's, and actually gives white an advantage. Okay, so the plan isn't easy to find, at least it wasn't easy for me to find during the game. Knight d to b1 may seem strange, but I'm going to reinforce the b5 square and the d5 square, making sure that any knight d4 jumps, which is a square that's currently undefended in my position, can be met with knight b5. So for example, bishop to e7, queen to d2, unpinning, knight to d4, knight to a3, perfect, castles, and now knight c to b5. And in this position, if the queens are traded off, I'm quite happy with this. If he takes on b5, again, I'm quite happy. And this is simply perfect. I have no problems in this position. I have complete control over d5. I could even consider going for positions with bishop g5 again, trading off the f6 knight if he doesn't move it away, and then coming back to c3, reinforcing d5, and maybe playing rook to d1, maybe playing something like this. Let's say black does nothing. Going for something like this, and then jumping into d5, preparing to take back with the rook, and trying to put pressure on the d6 pawn. So that was a good plan. And instead of that, instead of gaining control over important squares, I gave up control over a very important square in my position. I played pawn to a3. A3 makes my position so hard to play and makes his plan very simple. Basically, with d4 being weak, weakening b3 is one of the worst things I could have done. And from here on, my opponent outplayed me so nicely and punished my play that I just had to congratulate him. This is what he did was perfect. Bishop to e7, and I managed to learn a lot from him actually. Bishop to d3, knight to d7, bishop to e3. I'm trying not to trade off the only defender of my dark squares. The knight jumps into d4. I don't really want to take this. I castle. The other knight comes into c5, and as you can see, having played a3, these two knights are now monsters, and nothing is ever going to nudge them away. Here I played bishop to c2, trying to defend b3. That's not really good, but alternatives are pretty hard to find. Rook to c1, queen to a6. And in this position, I need to play calmly, and I need to try and plug some holes and trade some pieces. So what I should do is king h1 and maybe bishop f6 and knight d5. And if this is taken, then my position becomes slightly easier to play. I'm still worse, but it's not lost. What I did just loses the game on the spot. I played knight e2, thinking that, okay, I'm going to put pressure on d4, maybe force him to jump into b3 straight away, maybe I win a pawn. If he retreats, I'm controlling d4, I can take on c5. So for example, if he retreats to c6, then I can snap this off, jump back, maybe play bishop d3 first, and then jump back here, jump into d5, and I have a good square. Instead of that, my opponent just calmly played bishop to f6, reinforcing d4, and I don't know what to do here. I played bishop to b1, which loses a pawn by force. After bishop to b1, it's just game over. There's absolutely nothing I could have done after this. He played knight cb3. Knight cb3. And now I'm losing a pawn. I'm losing the c4 pawn because I have two defenders. My rook is attacked, and I have no way of defending. I ended up playing knight b3. If I play something like rook c3, that doesn't help. Simply knight d2, queen d2, and knight b3 again. Once the queen moves, he plays rook fc8, and my pawn falls. So knight cb3, I took on b3, knight takes b3, rook to c3, bishop c4, bishop d3. He went back to a5, which is a great idea. Queen to c2, and now b5, gaining even more space, even more control over key squares. And here the final blunder, which I was so unhappy with how I played that I think my concentration just fell below levels that are acceptable for a classical chess game. I played rook d1, just blundering the exchange, bishop b3, rook b3, a b3, queen b1. It's game over from here on. There's nothing to show you anymore. I'll show you how he finished me off. He transferred the bishop to b6, which is an amazing idea, trading off my only good piece. Then he centralized his knight again, took the c-file. I tried some tricks, but nothing really works. He's not going to move away. His f8 rook can just hang knight f6, h4, f5, queen g3, fe4, and here I resigned. Obviously, I'm either losing the knight or he's breaking through on the f-file, winning everything, and it's game over. So this is one of my worst games, I have to say. And I'm not unhappy with not understanding the opening or not knowing what to do in the opening. I'm unhappy with a3. a3 is just such a bad move that I may as well resign after that. And it shows a complete lack of understanding in the position. And instead of going for an active plan, I actually gave my opponent more time to occupy more squares and just made it easy for him. Still, his conversion was almost flawless and he played a great game. And I think it was very instructive how he punished my mistakes. So learn from my opponent in this game. Okay, thank you very much for watching. I hope you got something from this video, especially if you play the Najdorf or the anti-Najdorf f3 with white. Stay tuned for more chess. Bye bye.